Uh, my focus is on 3D archaeology, and I try today to see, with you and hopefully stimulate a discussion about why we need 3D in general for getting more information or different kind of information, and what kind of impact from the neuroscientific point of view this can have in the digital world and in heritage as well. Let's see. Oh. Oh. Yeah. Okay. This is my lab, actually, and this is my initial statement. So we'll start from the what they call digital hermeneutics, because I think that the speed of the digital doesn't allow us to ask right questions. What's going on about the interpretation process, for example, what happens during, for example, this very sophisticated installation, interaction, and so on. This is something we didn't study before, and it raises new research questions. So what they call digital hermeneutics deals with embodiment, inaction, interaction, user feedback, immersivity, situated environment, and so on. So this kind of knowledge needs different codes. So we transmit the information in a different way. And we don't know yet the grammar, which is, of course, more, it's still difficult to move here. Yeah, okay. In archaeology, because of course I want to stay in my field, which is related, of course, with other topics we will face during the presentation. The hermeneutic is based on, you see shortly in this slide, on data processing, recording, transmission, simulation, and so on. As we see before, validation is one of the things we talk about and where we pay a lot of attention. It's a very complex, actually, network of research analysis. We organized at Duke University over a year ago a workshop on neuroarchaeology, or sort of relationship between neurosciences and archaeology. And thanks to my colleague Bill Seaman, I try to simplify here the situation and the research question we have. So the observer will be in the archaeologist on site, can be anybody on site, is going to process information. We don't know what happens in the brain. We know what happens from the cultural point of view. So how we transmit information culturally. We are in the States, so we know, for example, how it works. In other countries, it can work differently. But what we are interested to study, that's why it's a very embryonic research, is what's going on in the brain. And this is something very new because it's based on genetic and cultural item. When we are on site, and that's why we still think that we do reconstruct the past, but it's not true. We simulate the past. We deal with archaeological information, which is not the past. It's one of the several past, of course, compromised by time and by four-dimensional information. And that's not easy to deal with. Let's go to Rome and try to analyze the Roman Forum. I mean, it's something hard even for archaeologists because the information is in 4D, right? Dynamic processes need a different kind of approaches and a different kind of information to be processed. In terms of analysis of monument, for example, I worked in the past for the Virtual Museum, the Giotto Scrovegni Chapel. This was 2001. And you see here that we have the cyber map of the Scrovegni Chapel and the Scrovegni Chapel. This is something I like to recall even for your presentation. What happens if I destroy the iconic space? And I say, well, look at that. This is the Giotto Scrovegni Chapel. You say, are you sure with this? There are cubes and links and strings and so on. It's provocative, of course, but what I want to emphasize here is the fact that we deal with a network of information, and somehow we don't know what is behind the iconography, even maybe all the time we don't know that. That's why we construct something, which is the semantics. But the semantics comes from the contemporary society and the past as well. So that's why we have different filters. It can be very subjective, can be compromised by cultural biases, and so on, and so on, and so on. The digital can help. Why? Well, because we can have a multiple view of this monument. For example, we can multiply the perspective of analysis. We can transform completely the way we approach the information. And first of all, we collect information even if we don't want. That's why one of the challenges in the future is that if I'm not aware that I'm collecting data, but I'm collecting. I'm here, I'm collecting data from this environment. My brain can continue to work even if I'm speak here, and then same for all the audience as well. And that is another metaphor I love from Capitalism and Schizophrenia of Deleuze and Guattari, so the puppet and rhizome. In the case of a puppet, a Sicilian puppet, you know, you move the string, but you know what happens there. Course. So the result will be in even the virtual model where we have a lot of processing behind the model, and we see just the model, but all the dynamics inside are still to be investigated and something like that. So we see the puppet, but then all the movements are controlled by strings and by the puppeteer. So that's something similar of what we do in archaeology as well. More in detail, the interpretation, at least from the cyber archaeological point of view, comes from digital memory and performance. Digital memory, well, not very easily itemized here, documentation, fieldwork, data entry, and so on. Performance is something maybe still new because it deals with simulation, interaction, embodiment, and so on. In the 90s, I wrote a book, the first book on virtual archaeology, and all the discussion was about the reconstruction, static reconstruction of the past. Beautiful model generated by computer graphics. The present, the future is completely different. We deal with dynamic models where the focus is on the interaction, not anymore on the model. There are a lot of people still insist on the model, but sorry, it's not the real focus, the research. It's important. Of course, I don't skip it. It's important. But the multimodal perception of the environment is one of the challenging because, that's my provocative idea, we generate a sort of digital mind, which is the part of interaction and the part of the environment, by simulation, the ancient, and modern mind, by interaction. We are at the very beginning, so don't expect a great result. We don't have yet polysensorial environment, for example, but I think the ecological approach can help a lot because an object without a context, of course, doesn't have a lot of information. This is one of the ways we approach 3D complex interaction. So what I can present today in terms of case studies, because otherwise we are still stuck in the theoretical discussion. I have one example from museum, from fieldwork, and immersive interaction. And at the very end, I'm trying to see where we can contextualize the interpretation. The first case study is something very new. It's the first time I present it in a conference, and it's the Virtual Museum Reggio Met Lapidi. It's my original town in Italy. It's near Bologna. It's a completely hidden Roman city. So if you're a citizen, you're very disappointed because where are the Romans? There's nothing Roman here. And when you walk around that, you might find something, but it's really a challenge. And a philanthropic association asked me to design this museum and work 2 years for this project. And we're going to open the museum in May, so it'll be very soon. Stay tuned, and we'll be in Facebook. You will see at least some pictures and movies and so on. What is interesting here in terms of analysis of what exists is what kind of data we can collect when you don't see a city. Well, we start to collect layer data from the modern city, which is still an historical town. Why? Because the soul of the Roman city is there. The pattern of the Roman city is there. So we don't have to be obsessed by tangible information because there's something intangible talking about the city. I mean, I don't want to bother you with the Documanus, the Cardos Maximus, and so on, but a Roman city reflects a pattern, reflects axis, reflects a geometry, okay? And this is still visible. Starting from then, we work on procedural modeling, and this is a great resource for GIS. Why? Well, because if we know, of course, spaces, we can fill out with buildings. You know, the Romans were quite standardized from a theoretical point of view, great planners and so on. And we start to generate this and integrating information with museum objects. So I start with the fact that you don't see the city, but there are several objects and artifacts in the museum. You can contextualize the application, and then you start to reconstruct the Roman Forum. And Unity 3D is a game engine several of course, you might know. And several object artifacts in the museum exhibition are contextualized now in the virtual potential reconstructions. This, for example, can reconnect the memory of the past with the museum visit. Again, if we leave the museum, any museum, to the taxonomic communication, we miss the point. That's the fact that, as Cecilia very well demonstrated, that the knowledge has to be based on affordances. So the fact that the way we approach the object, not the object itself, because an object can have multiple functions, right? Can change across the time, can change across the places, can change according to our perception. So this is the challenge. Then you can have the Basilica, of course. And then you see that this city was completely different from what the local imagination is today. Was not a city in the middle of nowhere, but was a city with theaters, with amphitheaters, was a city with industries, was a city very productive, this is part of the local social memory. So I think that this museum will be located, the virtual one, inside the real archaeological museum. So that we are designing a room inside the museum. And I think this can help to, hopefully, this is my wish, of course, to connect the digital with the collection. I'm very much against the marginalization of the digital. This is the Louvre pattern. The digital is a risk. Let's put the digital at the very, very end of the corridor so no one can see it, because we don't want our object to deal with this. No, purity of the collection. Well, okay, it's fine, but this doesn't help really the visitors to be engaged in both, I mean, collections and the digital. We start to design even something else that is called TITA, is a tangible interface where you can have 3D prints of monuments of the Roman Forum. You can move the object over the desk, and then you see the position of the object in the virtual system. This is intriguing because that is tangible, but it's also virtual. And this, the haptic, what we call haptic, this kind of tangible interfaces, can help to our mind to stay in the environment. So I'm touched this, I see where I am, but at the same time, you can change the virtual space in using your hands, for example, your position of your body and so on. This is my colleague, Todd Barrett, who is an architect and a designer and is a co-partner of this project supported by Duke. I want to conclude with a third case study, which is Çatalhöyük, where I'm digging with a team of archaeologists and as a project directed by Stanford University. Very famous because, well, it's an analytic site and also the place for many, maybe the first city of the world, the domestication of plants and animals, you know, this kind of great revolution for the human being and so on. So here the challenge is in 3D to reconstruct the excavation process. So what can we do when we dig? So how we can record data? And we start systematically in 6 years to record digitally by computer vision, by laser scanners, by photogrammetry, any single stratigraphic unit. So actually it's a meta excavation digitally. And we work hard with a team of students. I've always to say that over 80% of the work we do is done by students, and they are always involved. Not the same student, because generation by generation, like here, they change, but it doesn't change the fantastic, outstanding result of the final product, which is a collaborative effort. And you see, of course, that the reconstruction here is not yet the reconstruction of the past. It's the reconstruction of how we approach the archaeological data. So how they look in the field, in situ. And this is different because it's a past of the past. We have to start from this point of view in order to interpret, and then we can come up with reconstruction, interpretation, and so on. Here is another building. What you see, there are two horns there we call bucrania. It's a ritual platform with several burials inside. So the result at the end is very complicated because we have sequences of burials and sequences of infill and layers and so and so and so. This is, I think, is a very interesting case, the building 77, because you see their zoomorphic decoration on the eastern part of the wall. There are handprints. If I move here, the second slide, all this decoration collapsed in 2 hours. So the 3D model of this is the only information we do have today. We have lost, unfortunately, because the conservation is an issue when we work on this is a raw brick architecture, so it's very fragile and so on. But there are sequences in the wall. So when you see, oh, I see a wall with handprints. What do you mean? There are 7 layers of handprints. So different phases. I mean, also a ritual, possibly attention to the east part of the house. And here is the work we are doing with the human remains team. We are reconstructing burial sequences by 3D modeling. So while we dig, we shoot with camera, we record. The model is ready and now in a few minutes. So it's very important that we have a back and forth discussion on site. I'm very much against post-processing away from site because you lose, of course, the empirical touch of the layer of the context. We also standardize all the data for 3D GIS. And this is very important that all the work we do on site is compatible with general system. And then there are a lot of dots. There are thousands of artifacts that are recorded in 3D in the position. If you're not familiar with this kind of Neolithic excavation, you can imagine millions of information around you. The problem is that when you work in a layer, you don't know what's going on in other layers. So you don't have an holistic view of your site. That's something you miss because you're too focused on your work. And then your supervisor may be pushing you, say, go here, go there, checking here. But what's going on after that? That's important to know. Other questions are related with the life of the site itself. This site, as you've seen from the first slide, had over almost 2,000 years of life. So with a superimposition of houses, a building over a building over a building over a building. And after 40 years of excavation, only 10% of the site is explored. So, I mean, well, do you think that archaeologists are lazy? Or because what they've done, we have done in 40 years? Well, in the 60s, James Mellor, archaeology from Cambridge, excavated a house in 2 days. Now it takes 7 years because the documentation methodology is completely different. But of course, we do interpret much more and much better. But you have a sense of why the 3D information might be important in practice. This is an architectural decoration collapse on the room infill, and this is in transparency across the other layer. This is something we cannot do on site. We cannot watch a layer inside the layer, and so there are a lot of simulation we can, of course, do in the field. After the fieldwork, we move the model in several platforms, and this is the last part of the presentation. Here is we call DIVE, Duke Immersive Virtual Environment. It is a 6-sided cube, if you like, with a floor as well. So you have an analytic floor down your feet. You have all the walls around you. And this is actually a grad class. So we have a student inside that discuss with me. In this case, I have a tracker on my stereo glasses, and the student have other stereo glasses as well. So this is another part of the work. What we do here, well, we virtually dig the analytic building excavated. You will see in a minute the software we are developing. What we have changed in the last 2 years, we move from $6 million cave to $350 of Oculus Rift. I'm not against the cave. I'm saying that we have different tools everyone here can use. They're portable. We can move them to the side. You can have a virtual immersive experience on site with laptop, computer, and Oculus, which is a fantastic tool if you have the right software. This is an undergrad programmer, it's Emmanuel, who made a fantastic job programming for us a software we call Dig at 8IT in Unity 3D and Middle VR. And this software is developed for this space and Oculus Rift. If you don't mind, there are two, because this doesn't start automatically. There should be a link. Yeah, go here on the play and the play button. And yeah. So this is the site, and you see that, well, if you're familiar with Oculus, of course, that inside the Oculus Rift, the perception is completely different in the video. It doesn't show correctly, so the information. But you dig virtually several layers, but the layers are connected with the database, so you don't miss the information we collect on site. You can know everything about every single layer. You know, of course, the number, but you have all the meta information related with that layer. You can decide to dig, as you know, in this case, as a single context, the British tradition actually, method, or you can dig in another way. So you can, for example, have a different strategy and that way explore the layer you are interested, for example, for. Same here, for Ether, same as before. Go to the player button, and this is the. So you have a pointer, which is for us. You will see later is and you have a virtual tablet. You see here is in the screen. So the virtual tablet has all the metadata you collect from the layer, or you can collect by queries, for example. So it somehow is in between a simulation platform, game engine, and a GIS system. Still a prototype, but at least it's the first. We're going to improve it in the summer, but you have an idea of what we are looking now in terms of software development. Okay, at the end, let's say a few slides about the future. What we are going to use in the future, well, what is STEM? Are you familiar with the system? It's not yet on the market. We pre-order. It's a full body tracking system. So the problem of I discuss a lot about embodiment. So the way we perceive the body and the mind in the space, right? The body is a problem in the virtual reality system, you know, because there are several constraints. This is designed for games, but it'll be a fantastic tool for any simulation. So the system recognizes the entire body, and then your body can be projected in real time in the cyberspace. with a wireless motion tracking system. This is what we are using now. It's called Hydra, and it's a Razer two-handed 3D controller. So embodiment means also a good simulation of natural action, like grabbing, for example, or moving or touching. So this, for example, is very useful because actually you use like an extension, the Hydra, of your hands, as you know, grab something in the virtual space and so on. There are other systems able also to recognize your hands. This is very impressive as well. There are students engaged with Oculus here. Z-Space, which is a holographic screen. This is interesting because it's very different from any projector. It's actually an holographic projection. We call this proprioception, which is the perception of an object floating in the air. So you can imagine the Neolithic site, the house we are digging, just right here. So this is something, of course, you need glasses now, steel glasses, but in the future, maybe not. So it is one of the systems we are developing for the project. And same here at the last time, the player. And this is a new application presented in San Francisco 2 weeks ago by Sarah Kenderdine, who was my partner in many projects. And you see Oculus with a laptop on the back. It's a sort of backpack laptop. And Dunang caves. That's interesting, you know, it would be cool for students or for faculty as well. So it's, you can move in 10 square meters and you don't have, it's wireless, so you know Oculus is not really wireless, so they made this application wireless. It's very impressive the way you can explore the Dunang caves using this system. In addition, they made a tracking system for the hands, so you see your hands in the virtual space, which is really unbelievable. We moved to the Archaeology project, and this is I tried to put this video to the screen outside, but it was too big, so I'm sorry for that. This project is, for me now, a bit old, but not sure if it starts automatically or not. Just check again, please. No, maybe not. And it's about, let's say, lost heritage. I spent several years in China to record digitally Western Han tombs that were systematically destroyed by recent constructions, unfortunately. And this work somehow paid off because we had at least the virtual model, so we couldn't save the tombs. They are wall paintings tombs. And we made the installation in Hong Kong. This is a CTU university, and this is a prototype of a collaborative virtual room designed, again, in collaboration with Jeffrey Shaw and Sarah Kenderdine, the person I mentioned before. And it's a Chinese-American project, and it's unfinished because we didn't have enough funds for completing the project, but it's also an artistic simulation where the virtual room is a really big space, as you see before. It's over 15 meters of radius, and then you stay in the middle, and then you have different tracking system. You can recall several funerary objects inside the tomb, and first of all, you can really display the frescoes, which are lost forever, unfortunately. I have to archaeologically remind that the Western Han painted tombs are extremely rare, even in China. Less than 5% of the Western Han monuments, funerary monuments. So we had two of them virtually reconstructed, and I think was a great opportunity for the museum in China and also for us in order to experiment this kind of landscape reconstruction and virtual tombs, virtual visualization with some object as well, because we record digitally also some funerary object. In conclusion, so why 3D archaeology and neuroscience? Again, starting from the first point of my discussion. Well, as I said, we have a cultural question, but we have also to investigate some universals. We call universals that are genetically transmitted. And for example, let's see here, the relation between affordances and artifacts. The fact that the dynamic value of the artifact in terms of symbols, in terms of dynamic meanings, and so on and so on and so. The empirical findings of neuroscience have indeed demonstrated the important role played by cortical motor system, body action, visual perception. This was the most important discovery in neuroscience in the last decade, mirror neurons. So the brain is able to recognize action even you are not conscious at all. And this was the great discovery. So, why this can have an impact in art history, archaeology, and so on? Well, because aesthetics drives our question to the simulation in using, of course, digital system, even non-digital, because there are a lot of research is based on how we perceive art or some kind of artifact and so on. But first of all, we deal with map making. So one of the genetic activity we have for sure, and as Homo sapiens mind, the fact that we construct, we map the space around us. This is natural. And the fact that we can maybe drive this, or better, we can monitor and study this activity makes this field we can call neurostatics / neuroarchaeology and so on and so very promising. In terms of embodiment, what we call empirical evidence is based on, of course, embodied relations with their neurophysiological correlates. For example, this was already demonstrated by several neuroscientists in terms of embodied simulation. There are a lot of papers about this kind of studies, and that makes this activity in the future, I think, very new and very important, where philosophy of mind, aesthetics, art, and neuroscience can work together. So something we didn't try before, but it's a new challenge. And also, believe me, it's a new challenge for the humanities. In a period where the humanities are marginalized and so on, I think we can say something really important, because this is human knowledge. This is human knowledge. And no matter if we talk about archaeology or art, when we talk about human knowledge, we talk about humans. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maurizio, perhaps there might be some questions for you?
Of course. I think it was too late.
No, it's fine.
Oh, it's fine, okay. Sure,
So,
my pleasure.
Anyone have any questions for Maurizio? Yeah?
Please.
Okay. Oh, actually, this is for the live feed of the...
Well, hi. Thank you. That was fantastic. What I'm really wondering are more mundane things. For example, what is the process that you use in the shutdown review, for example, in order to record all the ongoing excavation? What all are the decisions that you're making on a daily basis, because this is a record that we never had before of the actual excavation. So I'm much more interested in the possibilities for conservation and whether you had some additional comments.
No, thank you. Yes, so everything is, all the decisions are almost based on daily basis. Sometimes, some of them almost in real time. So because, when we dig, the questions we have to face right away. But this is, it's about archaeology in general. What is important is the fact that we record much more what we interpret. I want to explain better. So the fact that the instrument are collecting additional information, the archaeology usually discard, or they don't think it's important. Why? Because we discretize the information, right? Let's say that we have all this piece of the room. We care about just this because we are focused on that, but then we record all the rest. So this was extremely helpful for going back even to wrong decision, for example. This is something that, it's it's challenging, digging a site and identify all the core units and core layers. But then when going back, well, we cannot dig again, but for sure there's more coming from the virtual interpretation. In terms of conservation, well, the case I've shown before, at Chatal we have, we call Chatal, we have 7 labs for all the summer, including a conservation team. But they arrived too late, so and all that wall collapsed. So this is one of the problems. But it's a unfortunately dramatic problem because even if you don't do anything, or if you do your best, even the conservation, in a few weeks, a building is going to change. So their transformation. In a year, several walls are all full of cracks and they might collapse. So there is a continued transformation of the site itself. And this reminds us the importance to record information, even if you don't have necessary questions about specific areas of the site. And that's why I hope this enormous database one day, very soon, can be useful for a big community, not just for the diggers or the community of student scholars working on site. Something for everyone in the future.
Any other questions for Maurizio? All right, well, I have one.
Sure.
Okay, so, in thinking about it, I guess it crosses pedagogical lines and sort of scholarly research lines, but you've been working with these technologies and seen them transform for many a year now. And have you been able to sort of step back and look and see with your students, or your own research, other researchers, sort of what might be afforded by perhaps like pencil and paper, and perhaps then the mouse with the 3D GIS, and now the sort of Oculus Rift and immersion, and sort of if you're finding that there's this back and forth sort of iterative process between them, or do you see it being unidirectional in some sense, and where at some point there'll be like this immersive possibilities that encapsulates all of that?
No, I don't see a linear process in general. It's always a back and forth, and maybe you don't mention because there's no time for everything, but we faced a lot of unsuccessful technologies. I mean, we have to be honest. Not necessarily a new toy is the best toy. That's why we archive also all the raw data from everything, scanners, digital cameras. So there are raw data for any kind of digital data in a new format and so on. A good example back to the question, is the use of tablet. The excavation is almost paperless now, so that we have a tablet with a stylus, of course, then we record, we draw, and so on. But still, there are some questions about if we need something in between, because maybe there is too much distance between the tool and, for example, the layer itself, or something you want to touch. And I have to say the response was extremely enthusiastic about the use of tablet and the digital and so on. At the beginning was more skeptical. There's some critiques, of course, on the fact that there can be a misunderstanding in the use of some tools, and then if you are too much focused on the tool and not anymore, or not enough on the information you are collecting, the risk is to shoot a lot and not to think enough. This is the fact that you have a lot of digital in your pocket. And again, I've seen, and know if you're familiar with Google Tango project, any? Well, Google Tango is one of the several projects based on a smartphone, and then where a sensor one day will, very soon, I mean in May or June, will be installed in a phone. Then you move your phone and you have a 3D of your environment. Well, do we need this? You can say, well, no. But when you have it, yeah, of course, yeah. That's the point. When you have it, you start to use it. And then you have, I have all 3D. What for? That have all the world is 3D. That's the point that we need to think about. That's why I want to be methodologically critical, and I think the importance of a university is fundamental, because we cannot compete with corporation. Sorry, we cannot. Even the top university in the world. But we can compete a lot in terms of methodology. That's why I think that this kind of approach can help. Not just the fact they have a phone, but what they can do, what's for. And all this digital has to be critically reformulated and analyzed and so on. And not just to have it, because of course it's nice, it's interesting. But we are moving from this, which is overall maybe just the past, and the fact that we have millions, 100 millions of people providing 3D content in seconds. So this is somehow scary, somehow exciting, but you might have your hybrid world, hyper-real, in a very short time, and then maybe using a very portable system. So this is part of the work we have to deal with, and archaeology is part of as a museum, of course, the old heritage. I think it's.
Well, thank you so much.